He needs Mr. Co-host.
He does need co-host, so I'm going to make you the host.
And then I'll make him co-host.
Yes, okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay.
No.
Okay. I see Phyllis, and I see the upper room, and I see Barbara, Sean, Anisha, Caroline, Ann, Lynn, Jane. Good. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Jan?
Hey, sorry I'm late. I was having all kinds of fuzzy problems this morning.
Yeah, I think you're not late. I think we have on here 9:45.
Oh, good.
It was 9:30 on all the emails.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I
Well,
thought
my
I was in the
mistake.
wrong place.
My mistake then. Okay.
So ignore
Great.
my email.
I already sent it back to you, said that I'm signing on now. So great. Good, good, good. Yeah, so this should be fun. Len, it's good to see you all the way from Washington, D.C.
Hey, Doug, how are you, my friend?
I am fabulous, just
Super.
fabulous. So,
And yes, I
congratulations.
agree with everybody else. I just took the liberty of updating my calendar.
Uh-huh. Good, good. And what did you find by updating your calendar?
That I've left off a few appointments that I've got to juggle around now.
Yes, yes.
So,
All right.
so it was definitely not a Doug issue. It gave me a break to get my act together, if you'll let me use that expression.
Uh-huh. Yes, that sounds great. As a matter of fact, maybe I should do that with all the meetings. Just start it up about 7 minutes late, so that way everybody can get their act together, get their breakfast and their drinks. Everybody has some libation there. Yes, yes.
Yep.
Good. Um, and wow, what a nice group. Uh, Caroline is the host, so she'll be letting in any non-bombers will be coming in. So recently had a bomber come to a
Really?
meeting.
Really?
Yeah,
What
very
was that
exciting.
like?
It was the heart got racing. My heart got racing because we were trying to stop the host from letting the person take over the meeting because he said that he was with the Zoom and Zoom security, and he understood that we had a security issue because bombers were coming. And so he said, so as a matter of fact, if you just make me the co-host, I will make sure that no Zoomers come on, no bombers come on.
Where
Well,
do these people find all this time?
Yeah,
That's what I
really.
wanna know.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. He didn't show his picture, but he had his name Billy Prince down there, which I'm sure was a made-up name. And he,
Okay.
and then the host was so enthralled with making, trying to find the technology of how to make him a host
Mm.
that she didn't see the rest of us saying, no, 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 don't let him become the host. And so, she went ahead and made him the co-host, and she immediately got knocked off,
Mm.
uh, and the speaker got knocked off. And one other person did so, but the rest of us stayed on. So the host, eventually came back on. She knocked him off, and anybody else. There were several other names that we didn't recognize, so she just knocked those off too. And so that's what a good host will do is recognize when somebody's not in and not recognized. So and so Caroline may be looking at a Encompass Life and saying, okay, Encompass Life, who is that? And I'm looking to see who that might be. Is that Mark?
Yes, sir. Mark, how you doing, buddy?
Great. That's great. I haven't seen you in a while, so that's fabulous.
Busy.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, good. Well, welcome all. How many do we have? Somebody do a real quick count. There's 8, 9, 10 of us, and we've got 13 people who have signed up. So
Well, I might have registered multiple times, so make sure it's not my name in triplicate or something.
That's all right. No, we've got you covered just once.
Okay, good.
Good. Jane, Catherine Booth is not on yet. Dr. Lynn Chapman, and by the way, Lynn, congratulations to your wife for becoming a doctorate, getting her doctorate. Mark, Phyllis,
Awesome.
Barbara, Anissa. Anissa, thank you for joining with us. That's great. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I think Anissa and I just met on Thursday, was it?
I think it was.
Yeah, at the at a chamber event at the Mandarin Council.
Mhm.
Okay, so okay, so let's go ahead and get going, and because I can see that we're just missing 3 people, and so Caroline can let them in when they appear. So welcome all to Coach Jacksonville, where we are here to make sure that you're happy in the coaching practice, or if you're thinking about coaching practice, or if you're just interested in coaching, then this is a great place to be. We're going to have an interesting conversation about building your brain. So, it's, of course, this looks like a plastic brain, but we're assuming that you all have real flesh and mush up there. So how do you build your brain? Dr. Sean Orr is joining us. So he's spoken to us a couple years ago, and so he's back by popular demand. Seems like every time he comes on, just to join us, the participants say, "Oh, we want to hear more about from the doctor about building your brain." So this will be an interesting time. Let's do self-introductions. And I think what would be fun is if each person introduces him or herself, and then in a brief way, let's say 10 to 20 seconds, and then add a little bit extra for what's going on that's remarkable right now for you. What are you doing that's worthy of note? All right, Barbara, why don't we start with you?
Ooh, I barely had time to think, but that's
No,
all right.
no.
I'm going to get my brain going the rest of this meeting. So
That's apropos for the topic today.
yes. So I'm Barbara Trapp. My companies are Zen Your Den and Zen Your Biz, and I'm a certified professional organizer and productivity coach. And I have been working virtually since March. What's going on? I've been converting my clients all to virtual. It's been taking a while, like with everybody, I think. And October 17th, I'm going to be going to the virtual ICD assembly. That's the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. So, and we're going to be talking about brain-based conditions. So
Wow.
a lot of my clients have something going on, a lot of letters. So it's always good to get more education and insight.
Yeah, good. Maybe you can report back to us on what you've discovered.
Sure.
That would be fascinating.
I'll probably discover some more initials, some more letters.
That's what we all need, a few more letters after our name.
Yeah.
Good. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? This is not the main thing, but this is up front.
Sure. I am I'm Sean Orr. I'm a doctor. I specialize in people with disorganized brains. So Barbara, I'd really love to see your Decide poster behind you there. I am trained classically as a vascular and critical care neurologist. So I started out my early career taking care of people with traumatic brain injuries and strokes and things that would try to kill them, and eventually migrated over to taking care of healthier people and really enjoying working with coaches and high-performing people. So thanks for having me here, Doug.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Jan.
Yeah.
I am an executive coach and leadership development partner with 40 years of background in healthcare, various roles in leadership, nursing, critical care, and HR. And what's most remarkable, I guess, recently I completed the John Maxwell Team certification as a speaker coach trainer, enjoying that. And this summer during the pandemic, I made 30 of these pandemic penguins. You have to look up, Doug.
Look at that.
I gave them to kids on the street and mailed them to family members across the country, and just had a lot of fun with the pandemic penguins and sharing a little love and a little surprise.
Are they knitted or are they, is it material?
It's all stitched fabric, and they're all different. I had a bunch of black and white prints. I'm a quilter, and I found a pattern and I thought this will be fun. And I made pandemic penguins.
Unbelievable. That's great. Wow, that's inspirational. Jane, let's hear from you. Wait a minute. Unmute yourself.
This is a treat to be with everyone on a Monday morning. Get my fix for human interaction. I'm a career and executive coach. I mostly work remotely, and today I have a lunch appointment with somebody in person, which is really exciting. And been doing this for quite a while. I was one of the early virtual coaches for career transition on a project back in 2000 with Bank of America, and have been mostly remote ever since. What I've been doing during the pandemic that's a stretch for me is, some of you know that I sing in choruses. I'm not a solo performer or even a small group performer. And because COVID has prevented choirs from getting together to sing, we've started Zooming, and we're doing the Rudder Requiem. And we're doing each one of our parts individually and having to put it all together, having to sing it myself and not mess up the notes. It's, guess what? I hit the notes. I just have to belt it out louder. So that's been kind of a fun experience. Confidence builder, I guess you'd say.
So when you're singing, you're doing that almost like on a solo, as a solo then?
Right, and then it's all put together in tiles like what we're looking at, and it'll be played all together. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. When you get that, are you going to send it around to us?
I'd like to be able to. I don't know what the copyright rules are, but if I'm able to, I certainly will. We're doing it we always do a service of remembrance. I believe it's around November the 1st, and so that's what we're singing this for. So it's pretty cool. We had a pretty big crowd last year when we did another piece of music, of course, in person.
What's the name of the group, Jane?
It's Christ Episcopal Chancel Choir.
Okay.
Fascinating. Hope to hear that when it's done. Len, let's hear from you. Wait a minute. Can't hear you. You're muted.
All right, cool. I guess you can hear me now, yes?
Yes.
As the old saying, can you hear me now? So it's a Monday, and I think we've got to turn this into a fun day Monday. So hey, everybody, I'm Lynn Chapman. I'm a workplace psychologist. I hail today all the way up here in Northern Virginia, sitting right next door to DC. I'm a former resident of Florida. That's where Doug and I met. And my wife and I moved up here to the DC area for work. And how about this, Doug? I think I might have shared this little surprise with you. We are in negotiations right now to relocate back to Florida.
Ooh.
Yeah, this time I think the government is going to move us down to Tampa, though.
Mhm.
But I'm
Okay.
still near you, so even good. So hey guys, again, Lynn Chapman, workplace psychologist. As a workplace psychologist, I help organizations improve their organizational culture, which directly affects the employee's well-being, which is my actual specialty. I specialize in two types of psychology called Gestalt and positive psychology. Some pretty cool stuff. I enjoyed Gestalt and positive psychology. I heard somebody, since I was out, say what's kind of happening during the pandemic, if that's what I kind of get a grasp of. Well, my business was kind of really severely impacted. Even though I do some consulting with the government, it was severely impacted by COVID-19 because of a lot of my work has been personal meetings with my clients. So I've had to learn how to do a whole bunch of pivoting and marketing and technology. But the coolest thing I think that's happened since the COVID-19 is I've had tons of people asking me to do coaching for them. I'm formally a marriage and family enrichment specialist. So I just pivoted on what I used to do. I used to specialize in helping families and couples who live with multiple sclerosis make their life sense. It was sort of like a neuropsychology, but without the neuro, but it was the more well-being side of the house. And so I started a coaching practice, and today I help couples and families, and I've got about 20 of them around the country. And you mentioned the Zoom bombers. I've had people to Zoom bomb me and turn those into clients from as far as Canada. Really? It's crazy. How do they find us, right?
Right. That's right.
So that's kind of what Lynn is doing.
Wow. I love it, Len. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mark, let's hear from you.
Hey, Doug, how you doing, man?
Doing all right.
Been doing quite a bit since the last time I saw you. We launched our 6-month curriculum. We just completed that. Some training coaches, and so we got our first class graduating now. And I'm training people to lead the next class coming up in January. So you got another one on the schedule. Got a book written while during COVID. That should be out in January.
Wow.
We got 2 body electronics classes coming up, one in October here in Jacksonville, and then one in Denver at the end of October. And I'm starting a program also for naturopaths and chiropractors, and brought on a professional management team last, 8 months.
Wow, you've been busy.
Yeah, I tell you, I had a lot to do, and we're getting everything's going word of mouth right now. But we're putting together a bunch of videos and marketing funnels, and I think we have 30 people coming to BE Jax and 25 to BE Denver. So things are just happening word of mouth, but we're getting ready to really step it up. So I'm having fun.
Wow, terrific, good.
Thanks,
sounds
man.
like fun. Yeah, well done.
Thanks.
Phyllis, how about for you?
Yes, so I am a transformational life coach and leadership development consultant. I am also an executive director with the John Maxwell team, certified in DISC consultant. And so welcome, Jan, to our team. But I've been really focusing on leadership coaching. I have some clients that I'm working with, and you know, Doug, I've been at this since 2018, since I moved here, but I was joined the John Maxwell team in 2016. So definitely I'm applying all of the learnings and insights and trainings, and I'm really excited about this time. Just really seeing the need to provide the leadership training and, you know, self-leadership development. It's been a great journey, and I'm so excited to keep on it.
Excellent. It's been fun for us to watch you on this journey too, going from thinking about coaching to becoming a coach. And thank you for allowing us to watch you grow into this.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
Right.
Anissa, let's hear from you.
Hello. My
Hello.
name is Anissa Ajman. I am a certified life coach, but I'm mainly a Christian life coach. What I basically do is I help millennial women in my age group. I help them find balance and joy. You may be a woman that has a lot of roles in her life, and maybe you're unhappy, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're having issues with your relationship. So I come in and I help remove what's blocking you from really fulfilling like your creation role properly. Oh my gosh, I cannot speak. I implement a lot of spiritual, like Christianity, into my work, because your spiritual health really pours into how you are physically, mentally, and how you are to people. Some people don't really see that, but I help like show them how that really plays a role in who you are as a person. And I am going to a Bible conference in Arizona. So I'm really going to be able to use that time to let women know that it's fine to love God, and it's fine to love God and still be able to do fun things in life, or still be able to really enjoy life and balance things properly. And my life coaching business is called Lavish Substance. So yeah, that's what I do.
Lavish Substance, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, well done. I'm glad to see you, and welcome to Coach Jacksonville. I'll introduce myself, and then Caroline will. Next, I'm Doug Wilder. I'm a executive coach, business coach, and somewhat life coach, because turns out that a lot of my clients are having issues with getting along with other people. So it turns out that I'm in the fire prevention business, preventing people from getting fired. So so having a ball with that. What's happening recently is the Wilder Wisdom subscription, which Caroline has put together. So many of my clients over the years have been asking me, we're going over all this stuff, this mind-changing stuff, but maybe we need to have some kind of reminder on a regular basis that reminding me of the good things that I've learned and need to do every day. So Caroline has put together this incredible program. So that's what's going on in my world. Caroline, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Caroline. I'm Doug's marketing director. And what's remarkable in my life is mostly also the Wilder Wisdom subscription that we launched on the 1st of September. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for you guys if anyone's interested in learning more. I just put it in there if anyone wants to see some more details. And then the other remarkable thing in my life is generally wedding planning things. I just went to a bridal expo yesterday and got to try some fun catering stuff. And I think we're almost completely nailed down with all that stuff. So that is what's going on with me.
Excellent. Thank you, Caroline. Why don't we do a photo right now of everybody? Can you take care of that, Caroline?
All right, guys, I'm going to tell you when to start smiling because I don't want you to hold it for too long. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys.
Great. Yeah, one of the things that Caroline always reminds me about is to look at the camera when doing these Zoom calls. So, because normally I'm looking at all of you and not looking at the camera. So, so good lesson for me. Well, great. Well, welcome all. And so we got the group photo, then the announcement. Any announcements? Anything that's going on that we need to know about? Any programs? Okay. All right. Sort of quiet out there. Are we doing any? Yeah, things are starting to happen now. We're starting to come out of the shell and like Jane said, have meetings in person, and so we're getting closer to the point where we're going to start, where we're having meetings in person. We're going to do this meeting we're going to do at lunchtime tomorrow. Len, I know you can't make it because you're coming from DC. And a lot of the rest of you have already seen it today, so you don't have to come, but you're welcome to come anyway. So Sean and I are going to go over tomorrow to Athens Cafe, and so we'll see how many people show up for that. That'll be fun. So that's my announcement. So with that, and then also we're looking for the topic for the next meeting. So be thinking about that. Anybody have any topics for next time that you would like to suggest? Okay. All right. If you think of something, let me know. And then at the end of the meeting, I'll ask that question again. So, so here we are, Sean. Sean and I have been, who's that? Oh, it's Jan. Sean and I have known each other for.
Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. You feeling bad?
Oh, hey, Jan. You're talking to your mom? Maybe Caroline, you can help mute her. Thank you. Sean and I have known each other for quite some time. He's been a friend of the family. My wife taught some of his kids, I think it was either singing or piano. And so we go way back from that standpoint. And so and plus he's been able to help with not only my brain, but my wife's brain. So thank you for that. So we're deeply indebted to him. But what we've really come to know is that he looks at the brain with a fresh eye on everything. And he looks at it and says, okay, so what are the possibilities? What can we do? And so he's always exploring new possibilities. And I think that's what we're going to find out today is he's going to give you a look at your brain in a way that maybe you haven't looked at it before. So, Sean, why don't you just take it away rather than me babbling over a long introduction?
Oh, thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. It is a great honor to be here today in the offices of Doug at our dear friend's shared office. So it's been nice to get set up here and see Carolyn today, and also to see all of you. You know, this talk I've been putting together for a while simply because I get asked a lot of questions, you know, as a neurologist about the brain, and I figured, you know, it'd be nice to have a common theme that I can share with people about my views of brain function without getting too overwhelming. So I sat down with Doug last week to just go over it, and clearly I was still too overwhelming. So I've really tried to make this practical and make it interactive also. So as we go through here, if you have questions, don't hesitate to jump in, and I'm going to ask you all some questions here too. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Maybe you all can tell me, are you seeing my screen here? Good. All right. So I was really excited to hear that we have transformational coaches here today. Transformation to me is my topic for the last 2 years that I've really focused on. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, when I was young and skinny and had a lot of hair, I was supposed to be a musician. I was training to be a professional trombonist. And my brother had a head injury when I was halfway through college. And fortunately, he survived, and today he's a renowned chef. But during that period of time, it really affected my family very deeply. And it taught me that the system was not really well prepared or designed around the patient or the family needs. And so I decided to become a neurologist and see if I could try to fix that. And here I am 3 decades later. I'm not sure that I've done much to transform the system, but I've learned a lot about how to transform individual people one at a time. And so that's really, I think, the issue here today that I'd like to kind of talk about is transformation and really ask some serious questions and then give some principles that I think might help you in your personal lives or possibly also with clients or other people in your network. So the questions I'd like to ask today is why change the brain? We're going to talk about the main driving reason why, which is what I call the neuroeconomy. We'll go through a very brief overview of brain structure and function. We'll talk about what happens when brains malfunction, what we call brain failure. We'll talk about some of the principles of brain building and practical applications that you can go away with today, many of which you may already know, but we can start to put it into a context that might make sense for you from an organizational standpoint. So the question, why change the brain? And I guess I would just ask, maybe some of you could weigh in here. Do any of your clients or anybody in your network for that matter suffer from procrastination or a failure to act, self-sabotage, a sense of low self-esteem? Do any of them have indecision or a sense of stuckness or fatigue or burnout? You see Barbara nodding her head over there. Some of this resonates with you. Does anybody want to talk about a particular client or someone in their network that might qualify?
Sure. I'm just trying to think. Yep, pretty much all of those. I have a client I've been working with for several years now. And yeah, we got organized, but it's also maintenance. But she definitely gets stuck on things, and it could be depression or anxiety, and she is seeing a therapist. So I always refer people out just in case. But we do have to talk about indecision and what's got her stuck. So I think a big part of it is finding the right time of day to start when everything's fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a very good point, Barbara. Thanks for sharing that. Honestly, all of us have had this at one time or another. Some of us have patterns of these behaviors. And as I go through this talk, I'd like you to see that this concept of brain malfunction or brain failure is the underlying underpinning reason why. And all of these can be fixed. So anybody else want to share an experience before we move on?
Sean, this is Jan. I would
Hey, Jan.
say that I've had several coaching clients who, discuss the same thing each time. And even though an action plan's developed and a goal is set and so forth, they tend to still just be stuck. And, I've done a lot of reading on procrastination and looked at the reasons behind it. And sometimes it's the fear of moving forward and making a change, even though they're miserable where they are. It's that fear of stepping out and making that change. And we talk about, what do you want your future self to look like versus where you are as your present self. So eventually we make progress, but it can be challenging.
Well, that's a very good point, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jan. Fear is such a powerful motivator in either direction. But when somebody's stuck, fear can really keep somebody from moving forward. And so we'll kind of talk about the brain underpinnings for that today. My main reason for talking to people about why to change the brain is because of this concept that I think is the ultimate driver behind everything right now that we're experiencing, which is that success in this new neuroeconomy demands a very highly effective level of brain function. So what is a neuroeconomy, you might be asking? And let me throw up a very complicated and laborious graph that's probably going to lose some people here for a few minutes. If you can bear with me here, I think the principles are pretty simple. And this is a representation of an old concept that's been around for decades, and that is that our societies have gone through these phases of change over time. And the real simplification here is that when we started out as tribal people many years ago, most people, more than 90% of people, were involved in harvesting food and gathering food, right? So this is how we kept the tribe going. And that would be the primary activities or agrarian work. And you can see over time that blue line, that's really dropped. So today, about 3% of our population is involved in food production and harvesting. So automation and technological innovation have really improved the delivery of food supply, which has freed us up to do other things. About the Industrial Revolution that came along, that was our secondary wave. And then after the Industrial Revolution came information work. So People in the British Empire and the Dutch Empire went out to the world and started to catalog all of the different kinds of fruits and flora and fauna that were out there. And we have the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was, it was quite lucrative at the time to work for the Encyclopedia Britannica. It was one of the best jobs somebody could get. But eventually the information gave way to knowledge, right? So information repackaged into a hierarchy as knowledge. And this is where the professions really sprung up. So as a physician, of course, I rely heavily upon our hierarchy of knowledge, which is based on information that's been evolving over the years. And with that knowledge, I can help to transform somebody else's life. More recently, we've seen an interesting fifth wave come out, which we're calling quinary activities, that is wisdom work. I would argue that all of you here today in this conversation are wisdom workers. Wisdom workers have a knowledge base, but they also know that it takes more than simply knowledge. It takes also the application of insight and judgment and discernment, because it's one thing to know what to do, it's another thing to know why we should do it and whether we should or not. And that's where wisdom comes into play. And so what I'm perceiving is that there's this explosion of wisdom work that's taking place, and you're at the forefront of that explosion. Coaching is a rapidly evolving specialty or discipline, as all of you know, and I'm not going to belabor the activities that are involved in the market cap there, but basically I package knowledge work and wisdom work into what I call the neuroeconomy. I think that as we go through this talk, you'll understand then the rationale for all of us to get really on top of our game from a cognitive perspective. It's never been more important. And I think that the coronavirus pandemic has really exposed for us that we're going through a massive transformation as a society. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I just wanted to give you that kind of background so that you'll understand where I'm coming from when we talk about brain structure and function. So if you all put your fists together in front of you like this, we know that the heart is about the size of our fist. Well, the brain is about the size of our two fists. All right, so it looks really big on the screen in front of us here. It's not that large. Our brain stem's about the size of our thumb. It's a very delicate organ. It's very easily perturbed. It's very easily damaged. And we've really got two brains inside of our skull, if you think about it. And I'm sure that many of you have heard of this concept, but we have a limbic system, which is our very primitive brain that's oriented around our survival. So the things that keep us alive as individuals and alive as groups largely stem from the automatic functions of the limbic system. So we sometimes affectionately refer to this as the 4 F's, the fight, flight, feeding, and reproduction. I like to be a little bit more professional about that fourth F there. The reason that we have this limbic system to keep us alive is why we are so good as a species at keeping ourselves going generation after generation. But sometimes this limbic system will hijack us, and we'll talk a little bit about how that happens. Now, the frontal brain, which is our newer cortical brain from an evolutionary standpoint, is the part of the brain that modulates the limbic system. It modulates our emotions. It causes us to inhibit our basic drives. It imparts a nuance to our daily conversations. It's involved in our planning and our sense of responsibility. It's where our judgment and insight and wisdom really come from. So we have this great kind of scenario that's been set up for us where we can live two different kinds of lives. We can either live a very emotional, impulsive, thoughtless, and automatic life that just happens in the background. Some people will call this kind of a sinful life, right? Versus a rational, deliberative, thoughtful life that's more intentional and we would consider to be a virtuous life. Now, many of us have experienced brain malfunction. When I talk about brain malfunction, I'm talking about the context of the frontal lobes going offline. The frontal lobes are very, very delicate and they're very easily perturbed. And when they go offline, then we default back to the limbic system. So I might ask some of you, have you ever had a fight with your spouse? Maybe here and there? Some? No. Okay, so Jan is immune. I have more times than I care to admit. I would just ask you to think about what time of day are you more likely to get into that kind of a conflict with somebody who's close to you? Is it usually after you've just woken up in the morning? Or is it after a hard day's work when you've had a couple of glasses of wine and you're trying to just find a little bit of mental peace at the end of the day? Anybody want to weigh in there?
It's the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll even offer when I'm hungry.
Uh-huh.
We call it hangry then.
Well, Lynn, since you work with couples in marital situations, I'm sure this is a topic that's very familiar to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you probably see plenty of.
Sean, for me, I believe it's more in the morning when I'm fresh and I'm really focused and I'm trying to get something and then done. And then there's a brick wall in front of me based on. Anyways, in the morning.
So you're very objective oriented then, Phyllis, and you don't want somebody standing in the way of you getting your things done. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So you're fortified, ready to go, and you don't want to waste your brain energy on
Right.
useless fights. Okay, great. I respect that. So this limbic versus frontal existence is kind of what we're getting at here, and it's a tricky thing because we have many connections in our brain. Our brain is made up of billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of neurons, and they make hundreds of trillions of connections. It's truly an incredible organ, and these connections all enable function. And these functions organize around different brain networks. And, I cut some things out of here. We could talk, if you're interested later, about the different kinds of networks and how we switch between thought and action, and how empathy networks that are derived from mirror neurons enable relationships. But these networks, however you look at them, are measurable and quantifiable. We can actually look at them now. We can quantify the extent of these networks on certain imaging modalities, such as a functional MRI. So we can actually look at these images and see where there might be gaps or holes that could be affecting somebody's brain function. Either way you look at it, the brain is our ultimate generator of our reality, and it creates and organizes the possibilities that we have in front of us. And the process of taking action really requires the process of making decisions. This is why I was excited to see Barbara with the Decide poster. And those decisions are based on data that's processed through these successively high levels of complexity. And if you think about it, at the root of this word decision is the concept of cutting, right? So the decidere in the Latin means to cut, right? So when you're making decisions, you're cutting. And this is the way I like to look at this, is we don't really make choices so much as we make decisions, right? And to me, as a neurologist, language is really critical. What we're trying to say and convey is very important here. So when we have an option in front of us, we essentially have a choice. Anytime there's an option, there's at least the option to not pursue that option. And there may be multiple options for us to pursue as well. And those enact a choice. And this is really actually something that happens at the quantum mechanics level. If you think about it, we could get into quantum mechanics later too. But at the end of the day, when you're faced with a choice and you have several options, ultimately to make a decision is to cut off at least one of those options, if not more. So Jan, you mentioned that some of your clients feel like they're just, they can see their desired future self and they're not taking the effort to make the decision to cut off an option. They're stuck where they are at their current choice. And the thing about making decisions is that once you take that action and you make a decision, now you're faced with what happens beyond that other option that you pursued. Well, guess what? Life is what it is. Life is full of choices, and we continue to make those choices as time goes on. Now, the tricky part about this is that this is a very energy demanding process. Just the very process of imagining our possibilities takes up a lot of energy. And if you really think about it, thoughts are things. Thoughts, to some extent, may be quantifiable and measurable and weighable. A thought involves neurochemical processes that involve the movement of electrons and molecules to store our thoughts, and those all do have mass. Now, we don't have a scale that's sensitive enough to actually weigh those, but if you allow the possibility for that happening one day, we might just consider that thoughts are weighty. And the metaphor is very appropriate, right? Who's ever been weighed down by their thoughts? You feel your shoulders just kind of round forward, and it gets a little bit heavy when you start to think about all the things that are floating around in your brain as you're trying to imagine and create possibilities. It's very energy intensive. In fact, the brain demands a lot of energy, even though it's basically a dim light bulb in terms of how much energy it actually uses. It's only 12 to 20 watts. And it only compromises 2% of our body weight. Again, small organ, right? But it uses 20% of our body's energy. 2/3 of that are for the generation of electrical signals that are involved in the process of thinking and taking action. And then 1/3 of that energy is actually involved in housekeeping. And I would just challenge you to think about how much time do you spend in actually engaging in the housekeeping activities that keep your brain functioning well. Come back to that. But at the end of the day, making decisions frees up your brain energy to take action. Once you make a decision and you move forward to cutting off an option, now your neurons can get reprocessed, spun up to focus on the new objective, the new choice. And this takes a certain amount of what we call activation energy. Has anybody ever been in bed on a Saturday and it's just such a nice day and maybe it's cold out and you can't even get out of bed to go to the bathroom? It's just too difficult, right? That's a low level of activation energy. Now, if suddenly your burglar alarm went off, your activation energy would shoot through the roof because you'd have to go investigate, right? And you'd have to ramp up resources. And anytime we're using our activation energy, there are 3 important things to consider, and that is our path, the duration of that path, and the outcome that we're going for. So, if it's a Saturday morning and we need to get to the bathroom, you know how to get there. It's probably not too far from the bed. Doesn't take maybe more than 10, 15 steps, and you know what's going to happen when you get there. It's pretty straightforward, and yet sometimes it's really just hard to muster that activation energy. On the other hand, if somebody's breaking into your house, you know your path is going to be to the phone, to your weapon of choice. Hopefully it's going to be very quick, and the outcome is going to be that you'll be victorious in the conflict that ensues. Either way you look at it, you've got a bunch of energy that you're going to have to use. And these are the essential components of all actions, and they all take energy. So I like to represent that process of finding your path and the duration and your outcome this way. This is a rubric. Some people will call this a gap analysis. Just breaking it down. And I apply this to my patients who have a need for some kind of brain rescue, repair, restoration, or protection. And I'll also apply this to my high performance coaching clients who are trying to achieve more than they currently have. But either way you look at it, Jan, you alluded to this a little bit, but we all exist at our current state. And ideally, we have some form of a desired future state that we'd like to be at. Now, for most people, this is a fairly abstract place, right? For some people, it's just, I want to survive today. That's as good as it gets. But for many people who are ambitious, that desired future state could entail greater income, better love life, opportunities for travel, get past coronavirus. There's all sorts of desired future states that we can think about where our outcomes or results are what we're looking for. And we can define those in terms of where we are today and the problems that might be needing some decision, and then putting some actions around those in the gap. Now, you note that I draw this in a way that shows that while we're going through that gap, our efficiency becomes diminished. So when we are stuck, there is a certain pleasure in that maybe things are miserable, maybe things are bad, but if I'm going to have to ramp up my activation energy to go take actions, now my efficiency gets compromised, it gets worse. Suddenly I'm having to think about things in a different way. I'm having to take actions that I'm not used to taking. And that can create an activation of that fight or flight response in the limbic system, right? We have an organ in the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala, which many of you may be aware of, is our alerting system. It tells us when things are different. It turns on the adrenaline that comes from the fight or flight system. It communicates with the brainstem in an organ called the locus coeruleus. Jan, did you have a question there? Or are you just exhibiting the fight or flight response for us?
I was just being the amygdala.
Okay. Yep, that's pretty much how it looks. If you look at the amygdala with an electroencephalogram and you show somebody a picture of a tiger, it does what you just did. It sets off a flurry of activity, and the adrenaline dumps into the bloodstream, the cortisol levels go high, and it's a very uncomfortable place to be for some people. So even just the suggestion of taking actions may be enough to dissuade some people from going through what they need to do and making those decisions. We'll come back to this. And this is where I think the concept of brain malfunction really comes into play. I used to use the term brain failure. I do sometimes still habitually do that because, well, you know, I mean, we talk about heart failure, we talk about kidney failure, pancreatic failure, thyroid failure, you know, all these other kinds of organs that fail. You know, if you get heart failure, you get short of breath and swelling in the feet, you can't work out. But nobody really talks about brain failure. You might use the term encephalopathy, but that's kind of a turnoff for a lot of people because it gets into jargon, and go try to talk to your clients about how encephalopathic they are today and you'll probably lose them. So brain malfunction probably is a nicer way of talking about it. You know, I've retooled my view of failure. You know, now it seems to be a common theme, right? There are no failures, just opportunities for learning. The only failure is when you decide to stop learning. So I'm getting rid of failure. Let's talk about brain malfunction. And really brain malfunction comes from the serious consequences of this heavy demand on our cognition, on the energy that makes it available. And many of you may have heard that multitasking really is not possible, right? Patting your head and your tummy at the same time is challenging. Trying to you know, drive and text at the same time can be lethal. We are not built for multitasking. We can do set shifting, where we do one thing and then we go to another thing. And that also creates a big demand, because when you're spinning down one activity and spinning up another one and you're going back and forth, it again creates quite a lot of demand on the brain. Another demand is this concept that my partner, Dr. Drew Edwards, has pioneered, the reward deficiency syndrome. I'm not sure most people have heard about this concept, but it's becoming popularized, and it really comes down to the idea that our dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain, is the chemical that makes us feel good when we have little victories or rewards. If I'm a caveman and I'm out looking for food and I find a squirrel and I bop it on the head and I eat it, I get to survive for another day. My body gives me this dopamine release that says, good job, you get to survive today. Now tomorrow, go find another one. So if I'm a smart caveman, I'll go find a few of my buddies, drag them out of the cave, and we'll go hunt a woolly mammoth and bring back that woolly mammoth so we can all eat for a year. And then I get to be king because I organized the whole thing. So now that affects my serotonin system more than my dopamine system, because now my social hierarchy, my place in the social hierarchy has just been elevated. So there's a lot of caveman stories we could talk about in terms of neurotransmitters, but either way you look at it, if you're not getting that sense of reward, then you're going to go do things to try to get that sense of reward. If you're a caveman, you're going to go find squirrels and mammoths. If you're somebody living near Las Vegas, you might go gamble and do a whole bunch of other things that jack up your dopamine system. We see people who spend way too much time using their text messaging systems, drinking alcohol, getting into toxic relationships. There are many different ways that we can use that dopamine system to try to get a sense of being normal again. But either way you look at it, most of those activities are not so healthy for our brain, and they end up causing problems for us socially, and they're very demanding for us energetically. If we have too much energy demand on our brain, eventually certain parts of the brain start to wear out. There's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which is our universal thermostat that regulates all of our activities, our body temperature, our weight, our hunger, our sense of satiety or fullness. And if that's not working properly, guess what? We might not ever feel full and might just feel that craving to eat, even when we don't need the calories. This is where we start to get into trouble with metabolic syndrome. So that's a big problem. Has anybody here had burnout or have clients who have burnout? Yeah. Who doesn't? You know, half of all of my colleagues, more than half of my colleagues are burning out. I suffer burnout. It's a bad place to be. There's a slippery slope where you start to lose awareness of the fact that you're cognitively exhausted, and it comes in phases. And if it's not checked, eventually it can lead to death by suicide. So it is something to pay very close attention to in this day and age. Teachers, about 40% of teachers are burning out. half of lawyers are burning out. Basically, most people are feeling this, especially with coronavirus. I would wager it's probably closer to 70% in many areas right now. But the good news is that it's reversible. And so is the social demise that comes with all of this. And so this is a manageable situation. We just need to understand how to handle it. But those consequences are serious, and they show up in different ways. They show up as diminished energy levels, interpersonal conflicts and relationships can be worsened. You can have financial damage, loss of career, all sorts of different ways that you can see a downward social spiral into mental illness that results simply from the malfunction of the frontal lobes. And this to me is where transformation starts to come into place. So if you think of yourselves as coaches, you are really masters of transformation. And if we look at this process at a large scale in society, this has really been worked out very well by sociologists and anthropologists. And it turns out that that gap that occurs when we go from our current state to the desired future state, when we make that commitment to transform ourselves, we enter what's called the liminal stage. So this liminal stage is characterized by a number of different things, but usually, burnout is one of those, and exhaustion, confusion, disorientation, frustration, while you're trying to learn a new skill set. And to me, the transformation masters that you are really bring value to somebody who's going through the liminal stage, because you help to shorten that phase up. That phase of transformation through the liminal stage, you have all the rules, the playbook. You can help somebody to suffer less and get through this to the desired future state more quickly. And this is the argument for your fees and for the structure that you're going through. Now, I would argue that as a society, we're going through this liminal phase on a massive scale. And I think that as of March 13th, 2020, most of the world woke up to this fact. Now, for those of you who have been coaching before the hammer came down, you already saw this coming probably. Phyllis, you're relatively new to this. I think that you probably saw this or felt this coming intuitively on some level. Am I right about that?
Yes, and right too, as I was getting ready to retire from work and was trying to decide what will I do with the rest of my life, how will I transform it? I mean, reinvent it. And then that's when I began to sense a lot of the need, because before I couldn't. But now, even now, I see it more clearly why I'm on this path. Yes.
Well, great. So if you go back to literature, technically you are what would be considered a master of ceremonies. So a master of ceremonies is somebody who has experience in a field and will guide the inductee through the process. And you can apply this to any circumstance, right? Somebody who's going through college, right? They're going through a transformation. It's challenging. You're living a less efficient life. And the masters of ceremonies are the professors and the dean and ultimately the provost of the university who gives you your diploma as you walk across the stage and say, congratulations, you've arrived at your desired future state. If somebody's going through, let's say, a bar mitzvah, they're going through their own transformation as a young person in the faith of Judaism. The rabbi will be the master of ceremonies. So all of you as transformation masters are masters of ceremonies. And it's important to note that there are people out there who are false masters of ceremonies, who are very happy to keep somebody stuck in the liminal phase for their own greedy needs, and can actually hijack a large number of people into their way of thinking and prevent them from moving through the process, and can keep, eating at the till, so to speak. So a true master of ceremonies wants their client, wants their patient, wants their student to get through this process, to be transformed and to be better than they were before. And as a society, now that we're going through this massive transformation into the neuroeconomy, where wisdom workers will start to arise in abundance, you're ahead of the pack and you have a certain skill set that you've mastered, and you're learning new skills all the time to help other people to make this transformation quicker, easier, less painful. I would just give you some care. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Phil.
I know through the coaching training I received that says, take these coaching skills and coach your own self, And so that's what I've been doing over the last 4 years. And so that's what makes it more powerful for me when I'm coaching someone, because I literally know what they're feeling, And so they're really inspired because, right, I'm not just one of those who's trying to make money off someone. It's like, I really know that I can help you get through this if you just take action on it. That they have that hunger for it. So it's really been a great transformational experience for me.
Well, that's really great to hear. And I think that's an important thing for potential clients to hear. And, you know, I'm not shy myself to talk about this. You know, I was a very highly esteemed neurologist. I had a big fall from grace, ran into a major catastrophe with the hospital system that I worked for. I was portrayed negatively in the media because I tried to blow the whistle on the institution that I was trying to help. I was run through the mud. I lost everything that I had. I was desperate, desolate, depressed, saddened from the loss of status. And then I found a way to build myself back up and come out of it and be better than I was before, a healthier, happier version of myself, transforming many more lives than I could have in that spot where I was burning out and poised to do damage. And so, you know, having that personal experience myself resonates with other people, other doctors, for example, that are going through burnout right now and are desperately looking for a way to try to work out their careers. You know, I think the coronavirus has exposed just how badly prepared our healthcare system was. I tried to tell people about that 10 years ago in a very loud way and was punished for it. Now, a lot of my colleagues are being punished into silence. They can really understand better now what I went through then, and they're looking for help. So Phyllis, when you're describing how you're applying your own process yourself, showing some vulnerability takes courage, showing that you also have been flawed and harmed in some way, and that you found a way to overcome it. And you can help to shorten up that pain period for other people is really important for them to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So anybody else have a personal story they'd like to share?
I'll share mine.
Go right ahead.
So when I was younger, I was going through a lot of home issues with my mom. And as a result of that, I moved out. And I was doing the most craziest things. I was out here, I got into selling drugs. I got into like being in many broken relationships with various men. I was just putting myself down a very dark path. And I had so much brokenness inside. I'm like, what is going on with me? And it really was when like, there was times I almost lost my life a couple times. And there was times where I really just like, it wasn't until I really gave my life to like really being like a devoted Christian. And like in the midst of that, that really helped me to like teach myself to like really balance my life properly. So now like I'm in a way much better situation than I was like over like a year or two ago. Like I didn't have no phone, no job, no car, nothing. And now I've had to literally build myself back up. So I've implemented that into my business to really help women around my age. Like, you don't have to go down my path, but I can stop you from getting burnt out. Maybe stop you from maybe indulging in like drugs or alcohol to really help your mindset. So yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for sharing that. It takes courage, Anissa, and I just want to edify you and praise God for the transformation that you've gone through. God bless you, and I really want to connect with you some other way outside of here so that we can have a dialogue about a faith angle on this transformation process also that has some biblical underpinnings. But, you know, for the larger group, I keep this a secular message, but I really, your message will resonate with so many people. It's funny to hear you say when you were younger, because to me, you look like you're younger. And
I know.
But obviously you've had some really critical life experiences that have been really meaningful and can help to transform the lives of many other people. So I just edify you and want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So I'll share some characteristics of these two economies from where we're leaving and where we're going to so that you can take these into your own practice and maybe think about how to apply them. The cardio economy is characterized by horsepower, and growth in the cardio economy is largely linear. It's largely characterized by a sense of scarcity, right? We're always threatened by the next famine and how things are going to fall apart. We were really living in a limbic existence for thousands of years, very survival oriented, and it was largely a disempowering place to be. People were largely victims of circumstance, and you know, until recently, when public health measures picked up and we had antibiotics and vaccines in modern healthcare facilities, most people died young. The average life expectancy was 45. So we were very fragile as human beings and easily burned out. So as we're going through this transition stage to the new neuroeconomy, it's a confusing time. People are finding themselves confused because some of those characteristics of the cardio economy are being transformed away right in front of us. It's disorienting. People are finding themselves disoriented, contentious, right? Do you think contentious may describe what we see when we turn on the news at all and see what's going on in the cities? It's pretty scary. Creating a lot of anxiety. People are anxious. They're feeling a sense of anticipation. They're anticipating bad things coming. What's going to happen with the elections? Who's going to fight in the streets? It's going to be race wars. It's going to be, left versus right. All these splits and dichotomies. But we're also starting to learn a thing or two about ourselves. We're starting to learn that maybe it doesn't have to be a black or white thing. Maybe there's a lot of shades of gray in between. Maybe we can actually work together to overcome centuries of division and pain and suffering. And maybe we can actually start to recover from this phase and welcome change. And this is where I'd like to really encourage all of us to take that concept into the world as we bring in the neuroeconomy, which is driven largely not by horsepower, but by thought power, right? As of about 2012, which is when we really did make the shift, just most people weren't aware of it, the majority of people in the world started to make their living through this great global network, this brain that we have on the globe called the internet. So more people start to make their money from thinking rather than lifting heavy things. Growth now is exponential. I think you're seeing this in the stock market. You're seeing this we saw this in the oil market when it crashed, how it kind of teetered around $8.35 and then it suddenly went zero and negative, right? That was a dramatic change. We're going to start to see these shifts happen, and they're very disruptive if we're not paying attention and attuned to the fact that rapid changes are going to happen exponentially more quickly. But in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this, but in my opinion, I think this is going to usher in a new age of unlimited abundance, and that we're going to start to live from a frontal perspective. A wisdom world will start to emerge here. That's not to say that we won't have a lot of turbulence on the way, but I think that ultimately we're going to end up feeling much more empowered. We will feel strong as creators. We will start to move from a place of being fragile to anti-fragile. That's a whole other talk we could have right there. And live an expansive life that's going to just, I think, really help to fill in a lot of gaps and help to lift all boats in the process. So as we've entered the neuroeconomy, our social status and standard of living now really depend more on our brain function than ever. Transformation is not optional. It's going to happen one way or the other. And the good news is that there's an antidote to brain malfunction, and that's what I call brain building. So brain building is based on this notion that brain function is not fixed, but it actually can be improved upon. And there are two main principles. One is called neuroplasticity and one is called neurogenesis. Now, we didn't realize that these actually existed until the last couple of decades. For all of the history of human anatomy and physiology, we thought the brain was a fairly fixed organ, and that after our youth, it did nothing but degenerate. But it turns out that through the principle of neuroplasticity, we can actually increase the number of connections or wire around the damaged areas of the brain to reestablish functions that may have been lost. So the brain is very nimble and it's adaptable. I think all of you here are evidence of that. If you've gone through career change, then you have used your neuroplasticity to learn something new. It can work against us if you develop a chronic pain syndrome or an addiction. That is evidence that neuroplasticity is working against your best interests, but there are antidotes to that as well through brain building strategies, and brain building strategies will raise your brain function. The other principle, neurogenesis, is the idea that we can actually make new neurons also. We used to think that the brain did not regenerate nerve cells. It turns out that we make about 100,000 stem cells in our brain every day. And those stem cells, if they're needed and called upon, will become mature neurons that can help to bolster our brain function. That's really important because after the age of 30, we lose about 30 to 100,000 neurons every day simply through the aging process and all of the other things that are in our environment that will wear us down. So having brain building strategies that we can employ in a holistic and an integrated fashion will raise our brain fitness. And I've created a scheme that works for me, and I don't know if it will work for you, but I'd be curious to get your feedback. And I categorize these brain building strategies based on 3 different levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. And I feel like they work in a sequential fashion. Advanced strategies are great, but they don't hold up too well if you don't have your foundation in place. And I learned this as a traditional allopathic physician who grew up in the decade of the brain, the 1990s. This is what motivated me to get into neurology, along with my brother's brain injury. And I started to adapt this concept of brain building through pharmacological solutions. I thought, well, this is great. You know, we have all these new drugs that are going to come out and cure disease. We'll have Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease licked in no time at all. And much to my dismay, they didn't deliver as promised, or sometimes backfired. It often would work, but I had to go back and ask myself, well, what's missing? If I'm using a medication to treat one of these diseases, there's got to be something else that's missing. And so often it was a basic thing like a nutritional factor. And I found that I could often break some of these pathological cycles and help somebody rescue or repair their brain function and get them to a place where they're protected. And then I would start to use these reinforcing cycles to optimize and enhance their brain function. And that's where I came up with this concept of brain building that improves brain fitness, it improves your resilience, your performance, your quality of life gets better, which just gives you more resources to turn back into brain building strategies. Doug, maybe you can guide me here. I just realized I'm like coming up on 45 minutes here. How am I doing with time?
We have about 9 minutes of the meeting left. So it's 9 minutes.
I'll speed it up then. I'll speed it up here. So basically, the physical and emotional strategies work together to all come into play. And these different levels are lifestyle conditioning enhancement. And I've created different domains, also nutrition, activity, and recovery, that work together. And so I'd like you to go out there when you're talking with your clients or working with loved ones in your network. And this would be, I think, a useful way for you to start to dig through what different factors are influencing their brain function. So on the basic level, lifestyle, what is their diet like? How active are they? Are they getting enough restorative rest and recovery? On the conditioning level, what kind of nutritional supplements are they taking? That whole market has improved so much. There are many nutritional supplements that I'll use that I use them in place of medications because they're highly effective. What kind of other physical fitness, maybe yoga, Pilates are they doing? Transcendental practices like meditation are very effective. And then on the enhancement level, these are largely medically oriented, but they could be stimulants and suppressants. So they could be things like physical therapy, neuromuscular therapy. We actually have transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is a modality now that we can use to help to improve mood. Uses magnetic waves that are transduced through the skull and alter brain function. Sensory modulation. There are many different things we can do on the medical side, but they all build on this concept. And really this brain fitness really should help to improve your client's overall quality of life. And so that's, I think I'll stop there. I won't go through all the rest of this, Doug, because that probably could take up another half hour if I let it. So I think I'll wrap it there. These are my contact details. If any of you have any questions, I would welcome them. Feel free to reach out anytime you think I could be of assistance, or if you've got a tricky client that you need some help with and maybe they're stuck or they just need that right kind of tweak that's missing, I'd be more than happy to provide that to you. I also encourage you, if you have WhatsApp, you can send the word brain in all caps to my phone and you'll get some automated connections there that will link you into our system. So that kind of wraps it, but I hope this makes sense from a 30,000 foot view. And maybe I'll just open the floor for any questions, Doug. Turn it back to you.
Yeah, that would be excellent. So let's ask questions at this point, but also, will it be possible for you to share your PowerPoint slides with us?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to. I'll get that to Carolyn.
And one other thing that we could do is we could post this if everybody's okay. It's been recorded, so So I hope everybody's okay with it being put online. Everybody okay with that? Okay, good. Hearing nothing, then we'll go ahead and put that, we'll go ahead and post it on the coachjacksonville.org website. Yeah. So any questions? Why, I've got a bunch, but you go ahead and jump in there, everybody. Well, I had several. So you said on the neurogenesis, 100,000 stem cells are made every day, I think you said. And then but it sounds like we're losing about 100,000 a day since age 35 or something like that also. And I imagine they lose more and more as time goes on.
Yeah, so it's around 30,000 a day. If you have a couple of stiff drinks at the end of the day, that ramps up to about 100,000. If you're a sedentary kind of person, that increases the number of neurons that we lose. So you know what Mother Nature is, and she'll do what she can to wear us down. But you know, certain strategies will help to reverse that. So meditation, good rest, exercise. Exercise dumps a lot of hormones into the brain that help to increase the connections, the plasticity, and generate new neurons. So.
Okay, so if I'm starting to forget names and something like that, then it's not a foregone conclusion that I'm going to continue to forget names. I can start exercising and doing other main brain exercises.
You actually can. And until about 4 years ago, it probably was not legitimate for me to say what I'm going to say now, but now there's ample evidence to show that we can actually reverse the effects of cognitive decline. Before we thought maybe we could stabilize it and slow it down, but it turns out now that with an integrated program that encompasses all the different domains that we've talked about today, people who have mild Alzheimer's disease can actually improve their cognition to the point where they are actually only at that mild cognitive impairment, which is a pre-Alzheimer's state. And people who have that mild cognitive impairment state can actually normalize again. And so if somebody's advancing in age and getting forgetful, showing some of those early signs that are pre-Alzheimer's, pre-dementia, by putting together a program, a holistic, comprehensive, integrated program, you can actually reverse those effects. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Sean, could you elaborate again when you were talking about the, say, multitasking myth?
Sure, Phyllis. So if you think about your brain as a factory, which kind of is an insult to the brain, but let's just go with that metaphor. You know, let's say you're the 3M factory and you make batteries, all right? But then somebody comes along and says, well, we need to make film now. So let's take all the equipment that's optimized for battery production, let's break down the factory floor, and now let's set it up to make film. Well, you've got all these workers that have these engineers and people have to move the equipment, stop the production line, knock it down, move it around, rearrange it, now set it up to make film. That's a very laborious process. Now, our brain is similar in the sense that if you're focused on a certain task and you have a set of skills that are oriented around completing that task, you have spun up your neurons in a certain way in that network to accomplish that task. Now, if you suddenly have something else that intrudes on your focus and your concentration, you have to downcycle that and shift your attention to do that other thing. It's a rare person who has practiced to the point where they can do both of those at the same time. And even then, we're splitting our bandwidth. And you know, you may see the person that works for Cirque du Soleil who can play the piano in midair and juggle and breathe fire all at the same time. But really, that's all an integrated symphony of skills that they put together anyways. You know, when we're working on a paper that we're trying to write, but then we've got a family member that comes in and wants to talk about their day, good luck multitasking.
So when you were talking about the energy draining, because I sense a lot when I have ended my coaching session or whatever that I am like drained. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, your mirror neurons are working overtime. You have these neurons in your brain that enable you to perceive the body language of the person you're working with. And by doing that, you're interpreting their emotions, their feelings, their intentions toward you, right? And that's what empathy is about. Empathy is simply the ability to read somebody else's emotions and understand them. And you're going overtime when you're doing that, right? Because you're trying to see if your advice hits, if you resonate with them, if you're on the same wavelength. If not, how do you say things to get them to respond? And so that mirror neural network is generating tons of electrical activity. You know, if you think about our neurons have these little components in them called mitochondria, and the mitochondria are like combustion engines. They take fuel, or they take, the raw fuel, which instead of gas, it's glucose, and oxygen, and combine them to make energy in the form of what we call ATP. And they also make exhaust. And so that exhaust has to get dealt with. And we have enzymes that break down some of that exhaust, but it does accumulate in the brain. And so when we go to sleep or when we go to meditate is when we turn on the waste disposal mechanism that washes out the brain. And if we haven't had the opportunity to do that, if our sleep is compromised or we're not taking time to rest and recover, it builds up and it really does cause brain malfunction of the frontal lobes.
Wow.
Thanks for that question.
Yeah.
Well, Sean,
Len, we're
Go
running
ahead,
out of
Doug.
time.
Go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, so it's 11 o'clock. And but I would encourage you to contact Sean directly if you have more questions. We'll have Sean back for a future Coach Jacksonville because I know that there are more questions and more ways to apply the brain and brain study to coaching. So, so I'm sure we'll be having Sean back. Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you guys.
All right.
Thanks. And I'm happy to hang around for a little while if anybody wants to ask any other questions, Doug, but I don't want to impose on your or Carolyn's time either. So you're in charge.
No, that's perfect. Okay, good. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and call the meeting to end, and anybody wants to stay after to ask Sean some questions, we'll keep this going for anybody who wants to stay afterwards. All right.
Well, Sean, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. So I'm in love with a television program called Say Yes to the Dress. The ladies know Say Yes to the Dress, and there's an amazing guy on Say Yes to the Dress in New York from Kleinfield by the name of Randy. I'm in love with Randy, and as of today, I'm in love with Sean Orr.
That's adorable.
Thank you, brother.
Good.
I appreciate
Sean,
that, Len. Right back at you.
So,
right, so
in my
anybody
former
who wants
life,
to go, anybody, hold on, Len. Anybody who wants to go, we'll catch up with next month. All right, great. Take care.
so
Bye-bye,
first
James.
I'll say I'm excited about learning a lot more about the neural economy. It's absolutely what I practice as a Gestalt psychologist, particularly from the precision of subjective well-being. And then when you think about the well-being of the employee or the or individuals in general. And I absolutely like the concept of how quality of life fits into this entire equation, particularly from the perspective that we either have optimism or we have empathy or we don't have these things. And I've discovered in many of the counseling coaching sessions, in fact, let me say for the record, I purposely decided to do a great deal less counseling because in my counseling, I found that it was typically one way, either up and down. But when I'm coaching, I'm allowed to partner with my clients. And I get a great deal more results as a psychologist when I'm able to partner with them rather than provide therapeutic concepts to the client. So I'm excited to learn more from you, Juan, and to visit with you after the call to really just pick your brain a great deal more about the concept.
Well, thanks for that, Len. I appreciate it. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. I think we've got a lot of overlap and synergy there, it sounds like.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Now I'm on the flip side. I want to add some element of counseling in my practice. I'm right now working on my doctorate for Christian counseling, because I believe that there's a need, but I'm just like on my 5th course. So I'm trying to figure out, like, is this what I need to take? Because I do sense, since I do have a Christian perspective, that there are some things that I need to understand from that perspective, you know, because I have clients where I'm coaching really from a leadership development, but I also have some from a biblical life coaching perspective. And so I was encouraged to also get the counseling to get some greater understanding. And you're right, Sean, it's like where I am too, is I'm focusing more on wisdom, because what's the use of having all this knowledge and understanding and not know what to do with it? And so that's where I'm going right now. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I'm a huge supporter of the concept of faith-based counseling. I mean, you know, if you think about it, you know, the major faith leaders in history understood human psychology so well, and they understood how to help people to transform their lives by giving simple advice. You know, the golden rule is a great example of that, right? And so, you know, the major, you know, obviously the Bible, but you know, I'm a Christian, but I also like to keep myself open to other people of other faiths as well, because I think the same principles apply in their faiths too. There's so much wisdom out there that can be applied, and really a lot of what we deal with in modern allopathic medicine is derived from that. So I support what you're doing. I think the more tools that you can bring to the table that help to budge the needle, the better. And whatever resonates with your client is what's going to work.
Great.
Keep up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, what's the best way to contact you?
Probably the best way is my cell phone here. Feel free to give me a text. It's up on the screen, but I'll go ahead and say it out to you. It's 904.
I got you. Okay, I got you.
Oh, you got it?
Yep.
Yeah, feel free to text me. You can also email me there at my email address. But I'm, you know, probably the fastest way to get right through all my filters is through the text message.
All right, that's awesome. And mine, that works best for me too, by text, fastest way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you've got a really good group here, Doug, and I just want to compliment you on all the years of hard work that you put into this and the leadership that you show. And, you know, it's really neat to see this here. I feel like Jacksonville, there's a huge opportunity. You know, when you go to out west, you know, a group like this would have, you know, 100, 200 people in it. And, you know, things are moving east from the West Coast in terms of, you know, new strategies and ways to help people. So you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Coaching started in California is what they say up, and then it moved to New York, and then it came to Florida eventually. But so yeah, we are at the tail end of it. But yeah, it was a huge coaching movement. And so that's why when we started this group in 2004, I believe it was, maybe it was 2005, there was a great vacuum that we were able to fill. And so we just continued to have these great conversations and be open to new ideas and new ways of coaching. So I thank all the people who have participated for all these years, and particularly, you know, today. It's been tremendous to get the feedback from everybody. And Sean, this has been just tremendous because there's so many, as we're talking to our clients, there's so many ways of looking at an issue, and certainly by looking at it from the issue of the not only neuroeconomy, but the neuroplasticity, the neurogenesis, you know, all the neuroisms are just tremendous.
Thanks for that support, Doug. I appreciate it.
Good.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Sean? Okay, good. Well, thanks all for coming. I appreciate it, and we'll catch you next month.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
Okay. See you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye-bye.